Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips, and Happy New Year to everybody. I hope you had a nice, peaceful end of the old year, beginning of the new. I'm all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to attack this new year and make some wonderful things happen. So speaking of wonderful things, we have wonderful things coming up at Wellness Forum and the Wellness Forum Institute. This semester, we're offering, of course, our famous Diet and Lifestyle Intervention course, which includes 15 modules: women's health, men's health, children's health, gastrointestinal disorders, autoimmune, covers all the major diseases, cancer, musculoskeletal issues, mental health. You could be a layperson and take this course too. I would say probably 20% of the students who do are not in the healthcare profession, but if you're in the healthcare profession, it will give you a lot of fabulous information that will help you help patients and clients more. And then in the Nutrition Educator program, we're offering psychology with Kylia Rohrbaugh. She's fascinating, wonderful course. Cardiovascular disease and nutrition and immune function, which I'm going to teach. We have some great special events coming up. I'm teaching a cancer boot camp at the end of this month, and then that's on Saturday the 29th, and then women's health boot camp February 25th and 26th. And our annual Food Over Medicine intensive, which we have live in our office at early March. So it includes lunch and lots of stimulating discussion and all that sort of thing. So if you're interested in those things, send me an email at pamcopper@msn.com. All right, so what I want to talk about today is insurance companies. And people love to hate them, by the way. And in some cases, they have good reason. Wrestling with an insurance company employee to get approval for a treatment that is needed is really frustrating for patients and their families. And it can be frightening if the patient is in a precarious condition and needs medical attention right away. That wrestling and back and forth and the time it takes is really aggravating. But there's another side of the story. Insurance companies sometimes have good reasons to make some of the decisions that they make, and they have been burned in the past paying for treatments that later were thought or proven, I should say, to not be such a good idea. Increasingly, denying a requested treatment may be beneficial for patients, although they might not realize it at the time. Now, a recent example that I want to talk about, it just kind of highlights what's wrong with everything right now. In June of last year, the FDA approved Aduhelm for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease, and it was approved via the FDA's accelerated approval pathway. The majority of experts, including the FDA's advisory committee, did not agree with this decision, and they cited concerns about the drug's safety and efficacy, but also the quality of the clinical trial data. Shortly after the drug was approved, 3 committee members resigned. One of them, Aaron Kesselbaum, MD, of the Harvard School of Medicine, called the decision, quote, probably the worst drug approval decision in recent US history, end of quote. Another, Tia Powell, MD, director of the Montefiore Einstein Center for Bioethics, called the decision, quote, a failure of scientific integrity, end of quote. The FDA, acting more like a business partner than a regulatory agency, allowed the manufacturer, Biogen, to skip phase 2 clinical testing. Now, there are a lot of consequences of this, but one of them is not knowing how to dose the drug in order to achieve safety and efficacy in the phase 3 trials. Additionally, the FDA's approval was based on changes in surrogate markers, like changes in amyloid plaque, rather than improvement in cognition or delay in cognitive decline, which are the outcomes most important to patients and their families. The relationship, and this is just as an aside, between amyloid plaque and AD is really not clear. And it's becoming, I think, very apparent. I think the evidence is overwhelming that plaque is one of many contributors to AD, and perhaps not the most important one. Well, one of the submitted studies showed no change in decline, and another showed improvement that was statistically significant, but clinically meaningless for all intents and purposes. In addition to the high price tag of the drug, $56,000 per year per patient, the use of Aduhelm requires regular MRIs, which adds even more expense to the protocol. Well, within weeks of the FDA's approval, several health insurers, including 6 affiliates of Blue Cross and Blue Shield, announced that they would not cover the drug. Even more important, Medicare has not determined if it will cover the drug. Now, just for the record, Medicare is not required to cover any drug approved by the FDA, makes its own decision. And in July 2021, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, began a national coverage determination analysis to look at data and determine if Medicare will actually set a national coverage policy for out-of-home. This process takes about 9 months, so sometime early spring of this year, we should see some type of determination. Until this time, the reimbursement decision has been pushed down to Medicare administrative contractors in 12 US jurisdictions. Well, in September 2021, CMS notified state Medicaid programs that they're required to cover out-of-home as an outpatient drug. According to a survey of the National Association of Medicaid Directors, this could cost Medicaid an additional $1.9 billion in 2022 alone. Well, here's what I think about all this. I think almost any expense could be justified if this drug actually improved outcomes for Alzheimer's patients and their families. Alzheimer's disease is a devastating disease that not only profoundly affects the patient, but also family members charged with their care. But this drug provides no benefit, none. I mean, let's hope the private and public insurance companies save us from another financial disaster due to the FDA's lack of regulatory rigor. And I mentioned in this whole thing that the insurance companies have been burned before. People have actually sued insurance companies to demand ineffective coverage, and the courts generally rule in their favor. But in the case of the cancer treatment, this was a fraud that was perpetrated by a doctor in South Africa who claimed to be treating breast cancer patients with high doses of chemotherapy and follow-up bone marrow transplant. His files were a mess. He misreported. The insurance companies spent billions of dollars in response to lawsuits. They were forced to pay for this. Duke Medical Center was a major institution involved in this whole thing here in the United States, and it hurt and killed tens of thousands of women. And so, again, I'm no fan of insurance companies, but the next time you read about one that's making a fuss about paying for something, it just might give you a little bit different point of view about, or if Medicare is not paying for something that you want, it might give you just a tiny different point of view about why they can be the way they are. And reimbursement is only part of healthcare. It's not the thing. It's just, you know, and the fact that something isn't reimbursable might even be a blessing if it makes you look further and perhaps find even something better for treatment. And there are all kinds of things you can do, by the way, to prevent Alzheimer's disease. I talked last week about exercise being one of them. Diet's has a profound effect. So does social engagement and using your brain. You've heard use it or lose it. These are much better strategies than a $56,000 a year drug. All right, well, as usual, pass this on to anybody who you think might enjoy watching it, and I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.